Good evening, friends. Good evening, fiends. Good evening, Dovakin Supremes. Tonight is extra special and bittersweet. Special because I've got my mischievous gray baby here with me. She is a cat, and we'll see just how long this lasts because she's quite easily distracted. And it's bittersweet because tonight we are wrapping up our dive into the fierce Wolf Queen Potema's story. Last we read, she was bested by her niece Kintyra, and in the next book, bested many people in warfare and had Kintyra held hostage. So devious, so cunning, so wolf-like. So without further ado, follow me into the Wolf Queen Book 7, which is also from the pen of Indolacus, 2nd century sage, 3E125. The exact date of the Empress Pelagius Septim II's execution in the tower at Glenpoint Castle is open to some speculation. Some believe she was slain shortly after her imprisonment in the 121st year, while others maintain that she was likely kept alive as a hostage until shortly before her uncle Severus, king of Ghislaine, reconquered western High Rock in the summer of the 125th year. The certainty of Kintyra's demise rallied many against the Wolf Queen Potema and her son, who had been crowned Emperor Uriel Septim III 4 years previously when he invaded the underguarded imperial city. Severus concentrated his army on the war in High Rock, while his brother Magnus, king of Lilmuth, brought his Argonian troops through the loyal Morrowind and into Skyrim to fight in Potema's home province. The reptilian troops fought well in the summer months, but during the winter months, they retired south to regroup and attack again when the weather was warm. I get that. At this stalemate, the war lasted out 2 more years. Also in the 125th year, Magnus's wife Helena gave birth to their first child, a boy who they named Pelagius. After the emperor who fathered Magnus, Severus, and the late emperor Antiochus and the dread Wolf Queen of Solitude. 3E127. Potema sat on soft silk cushions in the warm grass in front of her tent and watched the sun rise over the dark woods on the other side of the meadow. It was a particularly vibrant morning, typical of Skyrim's summertide. The high chirrup of insects buzzed all around, and the sky surged with thousands of following birds, rolling over one another and forming a multitude of patterns. Nature was unaware of the war coming to Falkenstar, she surmised. "Your Highness, a message from the army in Hammerfell," said one of her maids, bringing in a courier. He was breathing hard, strained with sweat and mud, evidence of a long, fast ride over many miles. "My queen," said the courier, looking to the guard, "I bring grave news of your son, the Emperor. He met your brother, King Severus' army in Hammerfell in the countryside of Ichatog, and there did battle. You would be proud, for he fought well, but in the end, the Imperial army was defeated and your son, our Emperor, was captured. King Severus is bringing him to Ghislaine." Potema listened to the news, scowling. "That clumsy fool," she said at last. I love how she says that about her own son. Potema stood up and strolled into camp where the men were arming themselves, preparing for battle. Long ago, the soldiers understood that their lady did not stand on ceremony, and she would prefer that they work rather than salute her. Lord Dovakin was ahead of her, already meeting with the commander of the battle mages, discussing last-minute strategy. "My queen," said the courier, who had been following her, "what are you going to do?" "I'm going to win this battle with Magnus, despite his superior position of holding the ruins of Cogmanthus Castle," said Potema. "And when I know what Severus means to do with the Emperor, I'll respond accordingly. If there's a ransom to be paid, I'll pay it. If there's a prison exchange needed, so be it. Now please bathe yourself and rest, and try not to get in the way of the war." "It's not an ideal scenario," said Lord Dovakin when Potema had entered the commander's tent. "If we attack the castle from the west, we'll be running directly into the fire from their mages and archers. If we come from the east, we'll be going through swamps, and the Argonians do better in that type of environment than we do. A lot better." "What about the north and south? Just hills, correct?" "Very steep hills, your highness," said the commander. "We should post bowmen there, but we'll be too vulnerable putting out the majority of our force." "So it's the swamp," said Potema, and added pragmatically, "unless we withdraw and wait for them to come out before fighting. If we wait, Severus will have his army here from High Rock and we'll be trapped between the two of them," said Lord Dovakin. "Not a preferable situation." "I'll talk to the troops," said the commander. "Try to prepare them for the swamp attack." "No," said Potema. "I'll speak to them." I wonder what she's cooking up. You know it's something. It's always something. She's got a mind like a diamond. Or a soul gem. In full battle gear, the soldiers gathered in the center of camp. They were a motley collection of men and women, Cyrodiils, Nords, Bretons, and Dunmer. Young bloods and old veterans, the sons and daughters of nobles, shopkeepers, serfs, priests, prostitutes, farmers, academics, adventurers. All of them under the banner of the Red Diamond, the symbol of the imperial family of Tamriel. So she really does have a mind like a diamond. My children, Potema said, her voice ringing out, hanging in the still morning mist. We have fought in many battles together, over mountaintops and beachheads, through forest and deserts. I have seen great acts of valor from each one of you, which does my heart proud. I have also seen dirty fighting, backstabbing, cruel and wanton feats of savagery, which pleases me equally well, for you are all warriors. Warming to her theme, Potema walked the line from soldier to soldier, looking each one in the eye. War is in your blood, in your brain, in your muscles, in everything you think and everything you do. When this war is over, when the forces are vanquished that seek to deny the throne of the true emperor, Pelagius Septim III, you may cease to be warriors. You may choose to return to your lives before the war, to your farms and your cities, and show off your scars and tell tales of the deeds you did this day to your wondering neighbors. But on this day, make no mistake, you are warriors. You are war. She could see her words were working. All around her, bloodshot eyes were focusing on the slaughter to come, arms tensing around weapons. She continued in her loudest cry, and you will move through the swamplands like an unstoppable power from the blackest part of oblivion, and you will rip the scales from the reptilian things in Necogmanthus Castle. You are warriors, and you need not only fight, you must win. You must win. The soldiers roared in response, shocking the birds from the trees all around the camp. From a vantage point on the hills to the south, Potema and Lord Vokin had an excellent view of the battle as it raged. It looked like two swarms of two colors of insects moving back and forth over a clump of dirt which was the castle ruins. Occasionally a burst of flame or a cloud of acid from one of the mages would flicker over the battle, arresting their attention, but after an hour the fighting seemed like nothing but chaos. "A rider approaches," said Lord Vokin, breaking the silence. A young Redguard woman was wearing the crest of Ghislaine, but carried a white flag. Potema allowed her to approach. Like the courier from the morning, the rider was well travel-worn. "Your Highness," she said out of breath, "I have been sent from your brother, my Lord Zephyrus, to bring you dire news. Your son Uriel was captured in Ikadog on the field in battle, and from there transported to Ghislaine." "I know all this," said Potema scornfully. "I have couriers of my own. You can tell your master that after I've won this battle, I'll pay whatever ransom or exchange. Your Highness, an angry crowd met with the caravan your son was in before it made it to Ghislaine," the rider said quickly. "Your son is dead. He had been burned to death within his carriage. He is dead." Potema turned from the young woman and looked down at the battle. Her soldiers were going to win. Magnus's army was in retreat. "One other item of news, Your Highness," said the rider. "King Zephyrus is being proclaimed emperor." Potema did not look at the woman. Her army was celebrating their victory. So, in keeping with our theme of ups and downs, this was definitely a down from Potema's perspective in the grand scheme of things. But after listening to this part of the tale, do take a permanent increase to your speechcraft as we continue our journey with the final book of the Wolf Queen, Book 8. From the pen of Enzolicus, 2nd century sage, 3E 127. Following the Battle of Ikadog, the Emperor Pelagius Septim III was captured and, before he was able to be brought to his uncle's castle in the Hammerfell kingdom of Ghislaine, he met his death at the hands of an angry mob. This uncle, Zephyrus, was thereafter proclaimed emperor and rode to the imperial city. The troops formerly loyal to Emperor Uriel and his mother, the Wolf Queen Potema, pledged themselves to the new emperor. In return for their support, the nobility of Skyrim, High Rock, Hammerfell, the Sunset Isle, Valenwood, Blackmarch, and Morrowind demanded and received a new level of autonomy and independence from the Empire. The War of the Red Diamond was at an end. Ooh, that's a blow to Potema, man. Ouch. Potema continued to fight a losing battle, her area of influence dwindling and dwindling. until only her kingdom of solitude remained in her power. She summoned Daedra to fight for her, had her necromancers resurrect her fallen enemies as undead warriors, and mounted attack after attack on the forces of her brothers, the Emperor Pelagius Septim III and King Magnus of Lilmuth. Her allies began leaving her as her madness grew, and her only companions were the zombies and skeletons she had amassed over the years. I mean, I get getting mad. The kingdom of solitude became a land of death. Stories of the ancient Wolf Queen being waited on by rotting skeletal chambermaids and holding war plans with vampiric generals terrified her subjects. I mean, she probably did. Vampires are pretty cool in the DLC, just saying. But also Solitude would probably be the best place to keep as your one stronghold. I'm just saying, because if you buy a house there, you get to display your armor on the mannequins and on the wall. You can put all your swords and stuff, and it's so much more organized than, say, a Whiterun house where you can just put stuff in a few chests and some drawers. I don't know. Preference for Solitude, way more vendors, way more weird hours. Well, I guess you don't have the Drunken Huntsman, though. That's a good one for all the time when you can't carry anything else. But back to 3E137, shall we? Magnus opened up the small window in his room. For the first time in weeks, he heard the sounds of a city. Carts squeaking, horses clopping over the cobblestones, and somewhere a child laughing. He smiled as he returned to his bedside to wash his face and finish dressing. There was a distinctive knock on the door. "Come in, Pel," he said. Pelagius bounded into the room. It was obvious that he had been up for hours. Magnus marveled at his energy and wondered how much longer battles would last if they were run by 12-year-old boys. "Did you see outside yet?" Pelagius asked. "All the townspeople have come back. There are shops and a mages guild down by the harbor. I saw 100 shops come in from all over the place. They don't have to be afraid anymore. We've taken care of all the zombies and ghosts that used to be their neighbors, and they know it's safe to come back." "Is Uncle Sepphoris going to turn into a zombie when he dies?" asked Pelagius. "I wouldn't put that past him," laughed Magnus. "Why do you ask?" "I heard some people saying that he was old and sick," said Pelagius. "He's not that old," said Magnus. "He's 60 years old. That's just 2 years older than I." "And how old is Aunt Potema?" asked Pelagius. 70, said Magnus. "And yes, that is old. Any more questions will have to wait. I have to go meet with the commander now, but we can talk at supper. You can make yourself busy and not get into any trouble." "Yes, sir," said Pelagius. He understood that his father had to continue to hold siege on Aunt Potema's castle. After they looked it over and locked her up, they would move out of the inn and into the castle. Pelagius was not looking forward to that. The whole town had a funny, sweet, dead smell, but he could not even get as close as the castle moat without gagging from the stench. They could dump 1,000,000 flowers on the place and it wouldn't make any difference at all. Years of necromancy in all their pungency. He walked through the city for hours, buying some food and then some ribbons for his sister and his mother back in Lilmuth. He thought about who else he needed to buy gifts for and was stumped. All his cousins, the children of Uncle Sepphoris, Uncle Antiochus, and Aunt Potema, had died during the war, some of them in battle and some of them during the famines because so many crops had been burned. Aunt Bianchi had died last year. There was only he, his mother, his sister, his father, and his uncle the emperor left, and Aunt Potema, but she didn't really count. When he came upon the Mages Guild earlier that morning, he had decided not to go in. Those places always spooked him with their strange smoke and crystals and old books. I mean, that kind of sounds delightful, not gonna lie. This time it occurred to Pelagius that he might buy a gift for Uncle Sepphoris, a souvenir of Solitude's Mages Guild. An old woman was having trouble with the front door, so Pelagius opened it for her. "Thank you," she said. She was easily the oldest thing he had ever seen. She's probably 70. Dun dun dun. Her face looked like an old rotted apple framed with a wild whirl of bright white hair. Cool hair, though. He instinctively moved away from her gnarled talon when she started to pat him on the head. But there was a gem around her neck that immediately fascinated him. It was a single bright yellow jewel, but it almost looked like there was something trapped within it. When the light hit it from the candles, it brought out the form of a 4-legged beast, pacing. Dun-dun-dun. "It's a soul gem," she said, "infused with the spirit of a great demon werewolf. It was enchanted long, long ago with the power to charm people. I've been thinking about giving it another spell, perhaps something from the School of Alteration like Lock or Shield." She paused and looked at the boy carefully with yellowed, rheumy eyes. "You look familiar to me, boy. What's your name?" "Pelagius," he said. He normally would have said Prince Pelagius, but he was told not to draw attention to himself while in town. "I used to know someone named Pelagius," the old woman said and slowly smiled. "Are you here alone, Pelagius?" "My father is with the army, storming the castle, but he'll be back when the walls have been breached." "Which I dare say won't take too much longer," sighed the old woman. "Nothing, no matter how well built, tends to last. Are you buying something in the Mages Guild?" "I wanted to buy a gift for my uncle," said Pelagius, "but I don't know if I have enough gold." The old woman, who we know who it is, left the boy to look over the wares while she went to the guild enchanter. He was a young Nord, ambitious and new to the Kingdom of Solitude. It took little persuasion and a lot of gold to convince him to remove the charm spell from the soul gem and imbue it with a powerful curse. A slow poison that would drain wisdom from its wearer year by year until he or she lost all reason. She also purchased a cheap ring of fire resistance. And I wonder who gets driven mad by that little artifact. Can't be someone named Pelagius, can it? "For your kindness to an old woman, I've brought you these," she said, giving the boy the necklace and the ring. "You can give the ring to your uncle and tell him it has been enchanted with a levitation spell so that if he ever needs to leap high from places, it will protect him. The soul gem is for you." "Oh my god, Potema, so devious, so devious." "Thank you," said the boy, "but this is too kind of you." "Kindness has nothing to do with it," she answered quite honestly. Very honestly, to be true. "You see, I was in the Hall of Records at the Imperial Palace once or twice, and I read about you in the foretellings of the Elder Scrolls. You will be Emperor one day, my boy, the Emperor Pelagius Septim III. And with this soul gem to guide you, prosperity will always remember you and your deeds." I mean, they certainly will, especially the Wabbajack. Such a cool thing. Yeah, it's like bringing Wonderland into the Elder Scrolls lore. I loved it. With those words, the old woman disappeared down an alley behind the Mages Guild. Pelagius looked after her, but he did not think to search behind a heap of stones. If he had, he would have found a tunnel under the city into the very heart of Castle Solitude. And if he had found his way in there, he would have found, past the shambling undead and the moldering remains of a once grand palace, the bedroom of the Queen. In that bedroom, he would find the Wolf Queen of Solitude in repose, listening to the sounds of her castle collapsing. And he would see a toothless grin growing on her face as she breathed her last. From the pen of Enzolicus, 2nd century sage, 3E 137. Potema Septim died after a month-long siege on her castle. While she lived, she had been the Wolf Queen of Solitude, daughter of the Emperor Pelagius Septim II, wife of King Montiarco, aunt of the Empress Kintyra II, mother of the Emperor Uriel III, and sister of the Emperors Antiochus and Sepphoris. At her death, Magnus appointed his son Pelagius as the titular head of Solitude under guidance from the royal council. 3E 140. The Emperor Sepphoris Septim died after falling from his horse. His brother was proclaimed Emperor Magnus Septim. 3E 141. Pelagius, King of Solitude, is recorded as occasionally eccentric in the imperial annals. He marries Kataria, Duchess of Ardenfell. 3E 145. The Emperor Magnus Septim dies. His son, who will be known as Pelagius the Mad, is coronated. We are all mad here, it seems, but with that, the Wolf Queen books 1 through 8 is at a close. I definitely appreciate how tenacious Queen Potema of Solitude is. I mean, if you're named the Wolf Queen, of course you are, but I don't know, I really like her, and I know that's probably not a good thing, but I really like her. Oh yes, take an increase to your enchant, because, you know, the soul gem that drives Pelagius mad starts here. But I do hope you enjoyed the telling of the tales, books 1 through 8. Do let me know if you'd like to hear more Elder Scrolls lore. I would of course enjoy reading it. Now off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again, and until then, Fus Rota, my friend. Good night.